Someone you should know. A program about people you know, and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sachs, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sachs.
Well, good morning. It's another Friday morning, and that means someone you should know right here on the radio with The Who playing in the background. And I have missed that for so long because we had some little glitches and we couldn't get that intro music in there. And that's my music. Who Are You by The Who. But glad to have you with us. This is KVGI Radio, live without limits from Frisco, Texas. And I'm in here in the studio right now all by myself. But my guest is on his way, got caught in some traffic, and he will be streaming in just shortly while we are streaming out to you. So in the studio right now is just myself and the head monkey butt, Mark Warner, owner and entrepreneur, and everything else around this station, Mr. Fix-It. And it's always a pleasure to have him at the board because he knows what he's doing and I don't.
Well, I don't know if I know what I'm doing, but yes. I'm here, and it is what it is, right?
But did you have a good week?
I have, man. It's been a great week. I've been getting a lot of stuff done here at the station and revamping and reorganizing and creating new things. And about the next 7 to 15 days, what we're seeing right now on live streams are going to change again because I'm just going to get bigger and better and bolder, more aggressive, and new things that are happening. And so, yeah.
That's why people have to continue to tune in and watch us because it's like the weather. Every week it's different. So you'll see different things. We've got new logos for the station. When the breaks come up, you'll see
That's true.
new graphics. There's new music coming on. We even are looking at entering the YouTube world.
Yep. We're actually already on it. We're on right now. We're officially on 2 Facebook pages and 3 YouTube streams, and so we're doing that, and we are also changing the company name. I've been doing it for a while, so it's not like it just happened overnight. But the company is KVGI Media, and the KVGI Radio will be the secondary. It'll just be a division of KVGI. And so I'm creating more of the KVGI brand nowadays because we're doing video and radio. And it's just a good direction for where this company needs to go and, move with times. And so we're doing that.
That means I'm going to be a division of something?
You already are. You already have been. You've been a division of your life, the entire life that you've lived for 109 years.
Yes. I'm never going to live that down.
I know.
All I ask is that I would like for somebody to give it to me in writing because I would like to be sitting in this chair broadcasting to all of you out there across the country when I am 109 years old.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I may not be able to say much. And it may be coming from some mouth without any teeth in it, but we'll be here right here just like Gabby Hayes.
Well, so I was just watching a World War II veteran. I don't know if it was on Fox or NBC. It was some big news affiliate. And he is 104, I think, this year. And what he does is on certain dates, he asks the public for certain things. And so this year, his thing that he's asking for right now is for everybody to send him a Valentine card for February the 14th.
Outstanding.
Because he's going to make it to 105. And that's his goal is just to get past one more date, right?
And so, for 105, he wants a Maserati.
Somebody could do that, yeah. Somebody could donate a Maserati. You know what? So the sad thing is, it's funny and not funny, but you could loan him the Maserati, probably won't have it long. But then again, some people are starting to live to 109, 112, 113.
That's right.
There are people that are living that long. So, you think you might give them the car for a couple of months to a year, but it might be 5 more years.
Yeah, and you know who's not happy about that? Social Security.
Yeah, right.
Because you keep drawing your benefits until you pass away.
Yep.
And so we're keeping people alive longer, collecting those benefits.
Darn it, we should have made that 90 years old. I don't even know. I don't even understand. I mean, I do understand, but I don't understand the comprehension of the thought process that somebody put that at 65, right? Because back then, so we don't work to 65 now. Nowadays, people work in their companies. It could be 20 years, could be 25 years, could be 35 years. It's
That's
different.
true.
Companies have different pensions and different ways that they have a retirement. So I've got a friend. He's just about hit 30 years. He's going to retire, and I'm like, well, dude, you're younger than I am. What do you mean you retire? And he goes, well, that's in my company. I've been there 30 years, so I'm up for retirement. I said, are you going to quit? Are you going to leave? And he goes, no, I think I'm going to do another. I'll probably just keep on going. I might put in 40 years. And he goes, but I'll be up for a retirement at any given time. So the interesting thing that some companies have a policy in is that once you hit retirement, they're just going to let you go and say the position's going to be filled. But you wouldn't be unless you did something wrong. You wouldn't be terminated or fired in any degree unless you did something wrong, but you would just be like let go. And you know what? Take your severance package and take your retirement and move on down the road. Thank you so much for your service. And
well, look, veterans. A kid can go in the Army at 18 when he graduates from high school and put 20 years in and retire, and he's 38 years old. So now I know that a lot of cadets that go into the Air Force, that's what they do. When they finish their 20 years, they get a nice pension from the Air Force, and then they become a commercial airline pilot. Then they put in 20 years with the airline industry, and now they're still only 58 years old when they finish a second retirement.
Yep, it's interesting. You just said something about military and veterans, and so it's not really beefs, but let me just tell you two things that I think listeners should actually hear. We always talk about two or three things. One is we talk about PTSD. And I'd love to get the public to change it to just PTS.
Well, yes. I think the public is just it's become an acronym.
Right. It's just a normal thing to say, but it's going to have to be the organizations, the nonprofits. It's going to have to be people re-speaking. And what we say in Project Reload, we say, change the narrative. So let's change the narrative. Let's talk about PTS versus PTSD. Disorder is a disruption in its general sense, but when you say it in a PTSD, it's like you were born with it, like you got some kind of disease and you're never going to get rid of it.
Right.
PTS can be cured. You have it. I've had it. We've all had it by an accident. So that's number one. Number two, this is the most interesting thing that I heard the other day, and it's a simple concept, but I love the way Sergeant Major spoke about it. And he's telling his candidates when they come in for service that you're not going to transition out of military into civilian life. What you're going to do is you're going to change careers.
That's right.
You work for the military right now, and then you're going to go work for some kind of corporate company. So take the transition out. You're not transitioning anything. You're still a human being that just gets a paycheck from one organization, and now you're going to go find another organization to give you a paycheck. So you're changing careers. Let's change that mindset that you're changing careers.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that. And some people will change positions within a same career mode. In other words, if they've always been in transportation, they will maybe take on different jobs within the transportation industry.
Right.
But others will say, listen, I put in 5 or 10 years in this industry. I want something completely different. That's called following your dreams. If you enjoy cooking and you've been working behind a desk for 10 or 12 years and you say, I really want to be a chef, be a chef.
Yeah.
Follow your dreams and pursue it. It ain't always going to work, but if it's in you, give it a try.
What ends up happening with society, Stuart, and you know this, is that people become procrastinators in their own right?
They're afraid of change.
They're afraid of change.
Yeah.
So, at New Year's, I got mad of a lot of people because everybody was, posting, hey, what are you doing? Where are you going? Are you going to what's your New Year's resolution? What you're going to change? And I made a post that kind of upset a few people because they were like, I can't believe you said that. And I had a few that were not really mad, but they had to voice their opinion. So let's just say they were mad, right? But all I really said was, worry about yourself. Be you. Stop worrying about what everybody else is doing. I said, resolutions don't work. I'm sorry, they just don't. Because what you do is you make a New Year's resolution, you go over the first of the year, and then within 5 to 10 days, all that's gone to hell in a handbasket. Now you're not doing it anymore because you quit working out, you quit eating right, you're not sleeping right again because you get back into your normal routine. Right?
Yep.
So there's that. And the other thing is that people are always talking about, I want to change, I want to change, I want to change. Well, here's a simple concept. I know some of you listening may not grasp this, and it's going to be kind of funny to me if you don't, but just think about it for a second. You can't change yesterday. It's that simple. You can't, right?
That's right.
In fact, if you really think about it, you can't change tomorrow either. And somebody's sitting there going, yeah, I can make a change tomorrow. I didn't say you can make a change. I said you can't change tomorrow. But what you can do, this is what you can do, people. You can change right now.
Right.
So if I want to change tomorrow, I have to make a change now. I can't change tomorrow. I'm procrastinating and putting myself back in the same perspective that I'm not going to change tomorrow. I'm going to think about changing today, which in respect, I'll change tomorrow. But I'm not changing tomorrow. So I have to have the mindset that I'm going to change right now. I'm going to make the change right now. I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start doing it now. I'm going to start thinking about it. I'm not going to just put it on my calendar, and you know what? I'll worry about it tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
I have a dear friend, Daryl Purpose, who is a singer-songwriter, and he wrote a song, and the title of the song and the main lyric is, and you have to think about this, you can't step into the same river twice.
True story.
You know, and you think about that. You can't step into the same river twice because the river's always going to be different.
Yep.
It's going to be a different flow.
Yep.
So that's good. And like I used to end my shows, and sometimes I still do when I remember, is that go out and be yourself because everyone else is taken.
And that's the true story, right?
Yeah.
And
Walt Whitman said that.
Well, and it, I'm not going to put this on human-wise. Humanity is we're human first, whether you're male or female, right?
That's right.
So everything that happens from there is you only have one thing that's connected to you, and that's your brain. Your brain controls everything that your body does, whether you're moving slow, fast, or thinking fast, thinking slow. It affects and changes everything. I really only have two words for people, and I have people. So you talk about fear. So yesterday I'm talking to Doug King. So I'm gonna kind of hound on Doug King for a second because he says he has no mechanical skills. He can't even hold a drill. He didn't even know what the reverse and the forward on the drill is, and so he was talking about he built something and he was sitting there for 10 minutes just drilling and things steaming up and smoking, and some guy comes over and goes, "Can I help you?" And he goes, "Yeah," and he goes, "Hold on, click, click," and he changes something. He says, "Okay, now try it," and whoop, it drills right on through. He'd been doing reverse the entire time. So all I'm saying is this.
That's Doug King's life. It's been in reverse more than it's been in forward.
I think everybody born, and it doesn't matter what you do in your life, how old you are, it doesn't matter where you are, you can make a change and get rid of the fear that's causing you to disrupt the decision that you're about to make. And it's two words, common sense.
Sure.
Slow down
Sure.
and think for a second. That's it. You don't have to be the mechanical person. It's like you don't know how to drive a car. Yeah, you do. You drive a car every single day. Most people get in the car and they drive. Well, okay, so you have an accident everywhere. Well, you got too much going on in your life. So stop focusing on everybody else. Again, focus on you and be you and drive the car.
You're getting very philosophical.
I'm trying. Yeah, well,
was that your New Year's resolution?
No,
to become more philosophical.
More in the middle of December.
Oh.
And I'm trying to push forward with it more. The problem is for me is I've been around 2019. I've been around so much negativity, and I decided that I'm choosing not to have negativity this year. I'm done with that. So let's be positive.
And I usually am every day. And then I get up the next day and have to start all over again.
Right. Well, I'm gonna hop off and switch the timer.
Oh, you have to leave?
I know. I'm gonna switch the timer, and so this way you have a longer conversation with your guest that just arrived.
Yes.
And enjoy.
Well, my guest has just walked into the studio, Robert Gralla. Thank you very, very much for joining us. And obviously, you were probably busy crunching numbers, and that caused you to be a little bit late. Just talk right into the side of the microphone. There you go.
Sometimes clients want to tell me their whole life story, and they don't get the hint when I'm pointing at my watch. So
right.
I apologize for being a little bit late.
No,
by the way,
that's okay.
I hope the shirt's not too loud. I want to wear something bright. People have told me I have a face for radio.
Right. We often talk about that, how that used to be a very funny joke about having a face for radio. But now when we broadcast our radio show on Facebook and everything, we now have faces for radio because people are following us live.
Scary.
And yes, but did I tell you we were going to be followed live?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
No, don't worry. I didn't sleep all night, but I'm okay this morning. And if I fall asleep, just nudge me a little bit.
Okay. Well, there's water on the table there for you if you need it.
You promised me vodka. Come on.
One of them is vodka. You got to go through all four to find out.
Okay, we'll get there.
But Robert is an accountant. He is a CPA. He is also a CFE, and I'm not going to say what that is yet because I find it fascinating, and if people listening out there, you know what a CFE is, we'll talk a little bit about what part of Robert's life that is. But as a CPA, the one reason I asked him to join us this morning is it's tax season. You know, you get past
Yep.
the 31st of December, and all of a sudden you got to start thinking. This weekend, my wife started taking out all the paperwork, putting things in on columns. You know, the donations and the medical expenses, and trying to get all of the papers together. And because then you have to take that to the accountant. You've been doing this for a long time. How many years have you been an accountant?
30 is about years I've been doing this work. When I got certified, that was when computers were first starting to be used in the business world and the personal world as well. And actually, when I took the CPA exam, we did it all in paper in this big, huge room. And it was all done on paper.
There's people listening there saying, "What?
Yeah.
What? You took a test on paper?
Yeah, on paper. Like
not
the
on
old
the computer?
days, multiple choice, and you had to write in those blue books.
And you had to fill in the box completely, color
Yes.
in the box in completely."
Yes. But I've been doing this over 30 years, and I've seen a lot of changes in the tax laws over the course of time that I've been doing this, especially in 1986 with the big Reagan tax changes, and now last year with the new tax changes, which a lot of people think it's kind of controversial, whether it was good changes or bad.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions. Is
Okay. I don't
how
know
how you feel about it? Because before last year, there were a lot more things that you could depend on, as far as deductions. You know,
Right.
one of them was, you know, and I have been doing it my whole life, and that is donating clothing to shelters, to people that resell it in order to raise money to help people. And all of a sudden, they kind of put a cap on donations, or donations of things where you used to get a receipt,
Right.
and then you would go home and you say, "Okay, I donated $120 worth of clothing," you know, and you didn't like donate that Timex watch and say, "Yes, it was a $5,000 Rolex." Yeah.
Well, actually, what they've done was this. They didn't change the amount you can write off for a deduction, but what they did was they changed what they call the standard deduction. Now, when you have a tax return, you have all of your income, you have adjustments to income, and then you can take what they call either a standard or an itemized deduction. And what they tried to do, and I agree with this, they tried to simplify the tax law by taking that standard deduction. For example, an individual was $6,000, now they made it to $12,000. A married couple was 12, and now they made it to 24. And what they did is they raised that, and by doing that, you don't have to worry about all of those smaller deductions. So yes, you could still deduct the charity, you can still deduct real estate taxes, you can still deduct mortgage interest, but if your standard deduction is higher than your itemized deduction, you take the standard, and by raising it, by doubling it, a lot of people fall into that standard deduction now, which made things simpler.
Yeah, but so I mean, people who want to at least still can keep a list going through the year on what they are donating, because
Definitely.
just in case there is something of some value. But if it's a couple, you got to come up with some pretty valuable stuff that you're donating to get up to, you said $24,000.
Yeah, well, it's not made up of just charitable contributions. You have things that you can write off, such as your mortgage interest for the year.
Okay.
You could write off your real estate taxes for the year. But there's a limit of $10,000 now of how much you can write off for real estate taxes, and if you live in a state with income tax as well. Now, a state like Texas, we don't have a personal income tax, so it doesn't hurt us, that $10,000 limit for taxes.
Right.
However, for example, I have a client in New York that pays about $18,000 a year in real estate taxes, has about $15,000 a year in withholdings for New York State tax. So he loses out because now he's only maxed at $10,000 for that real estate and income tax deduction. But other than that, besides charity, you could write off, like I said, real estate taxes, mortgage interest, personal property taxes, and also you can write off medical expenses, but you have to jump through another hoop to write off your medical expenses. But the whole essence of that law was to make it simpler so you don't have to worry about all of the receipts. However, I do recommend and I suggest you do keep records and you do keep copies of it, because when you get your taxes prepared, you do want to compare what are my actual itemized deductions versus my standard deduction. And obviously, you'd want to take the higher of the two, but you don't know unless you have all those receipts and you put it all together.
Well, you mentioned the medical deductions. If you have a Medicare or you have a medical plan, there is a deductible, and a lot of that gets paid. What you can claim is you're out of pocket.
Correct.
Correct?
You're out of pocket.
Not if I had that $5,000 procedure. You can't claim the $5,000 procedure if your out of pocket was only $500.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct. Only what you spend out of pocket. Now, for medical, you have to jump through a hoop. Now, there's this thing called adjusted gross income, which is basically all the money that you made for the year with a few minor adjustments to it. If you take 7.5% of that, anything above that, you can now deduct for a medical expense. Here, I'll give you an example. Let's say your adjusted gross income is $100,000. Okay.
Okay.
My mouth to God's ears.
Right. Please.
So, so now 7.5% of that is 7,500. So let's say at the end of the day, you add up all of your medical expenses. You had X-rays, you had medical insurance, you had a hospital, you had X-rays, dental,
Tummy
and all that.
tuck.
Yeah, no, actually you can't do a tummy tuck. But so let's say all your medical expenses add up to $10,000. So now the only thing you can deduct is $2,500 of that
The
$10,000.
difference between the allowable and the
Yes.
actual.
And that $2,500 gets mixed into the soup of everything else, like your charity, your real estate taxes, your mortgage interest, and that has to be greater than your standard deduction to deduct it. So there's a lot of moving parts to it.
Yeah, there was a discussion last year among a lot of people that said, well, I used to give a lot of money to charities, not huge numbers, but I used to give $100 here and $50 there, but it now it doesn't pay for me to be philanthropic and charitable because I'm going to get it anyway. So I might as well keep the money instead of giving it away. Whereas the guy who makes $1 million a year says when he gets towards the end of the year, and correct me if I'm wrong, looks like I'm going to have to pay this chunk of taxes. I'm just going to take about that amount and I'm going to donate it to a cause, and that then that adjusts his income
Yes.
level.
Yeah.
So, and the important thing I think that people need to understand is that TurboTax and now H&R Block has gotten into an online program.
Tax Act too.
Yeah, that isn't always the answer. I mean, I'm sure that there are people that have a fixed income. It's almost like carbon copy every year. You could probably do your own taxes. But every year there are tax changes. And unless you have somebody who is qualified and competent to tell you what those changes are and how they can benefit you, you're doing yourself a disservice. You may end up paying more taxes than you really need to.
Actually, I like you. Thank you for the plug. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and you're right downstairs from the studios.
And
so
you know what else I say? I always say if you think the cost of a professional is expensive, try hiring an amateur.
yes, I saw that quote. You have that on your
On the back of my business card.
Yes, and all, and I read that like 3 or 4 times because the more you think about it, it's just like when you want to fix something in the house, and your next door neighbor says, "Oh, I got a cousin that's a handyman," and he comes over and fixes it, and all, and you pay him for it, and then 6 months later, you have to now call a professional to come in and do it right.
Right.
So, use a professional
Yes.
from the beginning.
However, I have to say though, in benefit and in just benefit of TurboTax and H&R Block and all those online programs, all the ones that you can buy and load onto your computer, they are good, but they're limited, and the limit is your knowledge of the tax law. Because I've worked with some of those programs, and I've done some fairly sophisticated tax returns because I know what I'm looking for and I know what I want the program to do. But you take the person who never does taxes and does it once a year, they do their own personal taxes. If you have a simple return, you have a W-2 form, maybe a little bit of interest in the bank, maybe a little bit of investment income. Yes,
Right.
It'll help you. You could do it. You read through the questions and you could do the tax return on your own. You don't have to go to somebody like me or a professional or one of those services that you can go to at Walmart, H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt. You don't have to if it's simple. But when you get the things that are sophisticated, especially if you're self-employed and you have your own business, then it can get a little bit tricky because you really don't know what the ins and outs of the tax law are. I had somebody that came to me recently and they showed me their last year's return for 2018. 2018, one of the changes of the tax law is this thing called a 199A deduction. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes.
Oh, well, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah. Well, because I'm an independent businessman.
There you go. A lot of people never heard of it. What
That's
that
right.
is it's an additional 20% off of your business income. So if your business made $10,000, you don't pay the tax on the $10,000, but you pay tax on the $8,000. You get a $2,000 deduction. Yay, new tax law. A lot of people don't know that.
Right.
And even going through the prompts and the questions in TurboTax, it may not bring it out, or people may not understand that, and they lose a $2,000 deduction or whatever the 20% amount is. So for self-employed people, TurboTax, H&R Block, and all those online or those services you could buy or the programs you could buy, it's good, but you have to know what you're doing. You have to understand the tax law. And I can help people in that situation because I know exactly what to look for, what the tax laws are, what the changes are. And looking at their situation in particular, I can get a good gauge, an idea, and a guide from them and what they do, where I can come up with ideas to help them benefit with the tax law or even the new tax law.
Where did you study accounting?
I studied accounting in New York on Long Island.
I sensed a little bit of an accent there.
I have to tell you as a side note, I wish I had $1 for every time someone said to me down here in Texas, "You ain't from these here parts, are you?"
Right. But do you find yourself being here in Texas? Do you find yourself saying y'all?
Y'all, yeah, I do. I have to tell you, I definitely do. It's interesting. I go back to New York to visit every once in a while. I have family up there. I go back 2, 3.
You have to refresh your accent and get a good bagel.
Definitely bagel. There's a lot of stories behind those bagels and pizza.
Yes.
You know, a good slice of pizza is the one that you can fold in half and eat it.
No, you can't you can't say that to somebody from Chicago.
Oh, well.
Because pizza to me is something you eat with a knife and fork.
Well, I got to tell you, we don't have that much time to debate over pizza, so I'm sure we can.
But well, maybe we should order a deep dish and a thin and crust and talk about it, debate it. But
yes, I went I got my master's degree in business and accounting at Long Island University on Long Island in New York. I went to Queens College, City of University, and I have to tell you, in those days, college was pretty inexpensive, at least for the City University.
Right.
I was a resident of New York City. I grew up in Queens. I was born in Brooklyn. Yay, Brooklyn.
Go Nets.
And City University in New York was relatively inexpensive. There was a small tuition fee, and you didn't pay per credit, and I got a fantastic education for relatively nothing. I could have gone to the state universities of New York State and all that, but I didn't want to go to what I call sleepaway college. You know,
Right.
it just wasn't in my my work plan.
And there was always too much temptation not to spend time on the books.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. So I went to Long Island University. I did a master's program in the evening. I worked during the day, and I went to school in the evening. And after that, I took the CPA exam in New York State, and I passed it after taking it. Took about 3 times. Took each part. It's 4 parts to it, so I took a different part each time, and that's how I passed it. And that's where I got my background, my education. And this is going back to 1980, when I got when I took all that and passed the exam and everything.
And so where is the Texas connection now?
Okay. Back at the end of 1999, there was a couple of issues I was going through, family issues. I was getting divorced at the time, and I was done with New York State. I've just had enough with it. I was done with the rat race in New York. And I know that there was life beyond the Hudson River. And for those that don't know what the Hudson River is, it's the defining point between New York City and the West.
Right. If you can make it past the Hudson River, you're free.
Yeah. The hardest part now, getting past the Hudson River, is paying the toll.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
And you pay the toll and still have to sit bumper to bumper
Yes.
to get through.
They should pay you. They should pay you on an hourly rate for sitting in traffic. But anyway, so I decided, I had a client down in Texas. I've been here once or twice, and I said, Texas, in my New York accent, this is a nice place to be. I like Texas. It's a good place. And here I am. I have a degree in accounting. I'm a CPA. I mean, I could do a lot of different things. I've worked many different part-time jobs going to college, going to graduate school. So I have a lot of skills, a lot of trades that I could do. I worked in a bakery, in a retail bake shop in the Bronx in New York. My bakery.
Oh, so you know a good bagel.
Oh, gosh, I do. Good cheesecake also.
Yes.
I worked as a waiter in the Catskills, similar to Dirty Dancing, that type of.
Okay.
I've done that kind of work. In fact, it was interesting. And I know I'm going off on a side
That's okay. I told you this show is conversational. If it was Q&A, people would be sitting at home if you're talking about accounting,
And I worked part-time as a waiter up in the Catskills when I was going to college, and it was a lot of fun. And there's someone, a friend of mine, that says I talk too much, and I think I'm proving that person right now because they're probably listening. Where was I?
we were in the Catskills.
Yes. For those that don't know what the Catskills are what they call the Borscht Belt.
Yes.
It's upstate New York,
Upstate
about
New York.
a mile north of New York City. and they have the most beautiful mountains, the most beautiful landscapes, streams, rivers. It's absolutely gorgeous.
That are getting just covered in snow right now.
Yeah,
Because
unfortunately.
that storm is heading
Yes.
right up to Catskills in northern
Yes.
part of New York.
And in I would say between the 30s to maybe the mid 80s, it was a large resort area. There were literally at the peak thousands of hotels, and they had these colonies, bungalow colonies. People would stay in the summertime. It was a great escape to get out of the city. And
Right.
the hotels had dining rooms, and some of them were very lavish, very luxurious. So they needed wait staff to work and serve their guests. And we made a lot of money as waiters, working weekends, working their summertime, and it helped support myself while I was going to college. It was a great experience. Made a lot of friends up there. I'm still in touch with 2 or 3 people that I work with up there that we've scattered throughout the country. We email, we get together every couple of years. It's really
That's great.
a wonderful experience. And so I've worked many different types of jobs, and so I had skills. So besides being a CPA, I'm trying to bring this back, and I'm trying to figure out where we're going because I finally remembered.
You're trying to find the turn at the end of the block.
We got to figure out where we're coming from. So when I came down, I'm a CPA, and I figured Dallas is a big city, and I can get a job as an accounting major, as a CPA. I can find a job fairly easy, I'm pretty sure. Plus all these other skills that I had. And in fact, there was one time I was in between jobs, and it was around Christmas time. This was about 15, 18 years ago. I worked at a major chain restaurant as a waiter between Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. And I was waiting for a new job to start, beginning of the year, tax work. And I was sitting home doing nothing. I go, let me get a job. And I worked with some of the college kids during that time. And I'm an old guy working with college kids. I had so much fun with them. It was fantastic. I made a lot of money working as a waiter. And just the skills that I had, I wasn't afraid to come down to Dallas and take a chance. And I did. And it worked out well.
Now, when you come to Dallas and you set up your accounting degree, do you have to now take additional tests or something to become certified in the state of Texas?
Good question. The state of Texas, the accountancy board is very strict. You don't want to ever go up against the accountancy board. They're very strict and have a lot of rules, which is great because it protects the profession and it protects the public, which is great. I have no problem with what they do. So when I came down, they acknowledged the fact that I passed the CPA exam, and I had to go and basically re-register to be a CPA. What that means is I had to show them all of my college credits, that I had enough college credits in the accountancy field. I had to take an ethics exam, and I had to have what they call continuing education credits. I had to go back and I had to get all those 3 more requirements, which I had for New York State, but I had to do that again for Texas. And then that, with the fact that I had to show them that I passed the CPA exam, they gave me my license in Texas. So I didn't have to start from scratch. They allowed me to say that, yes, I had the CPA exam and I passed that, but I had to do all the other requirements that were necessary to be a CPA.
Some of it's reciprocal. Like I think if you're in the real estate business, you move from state to state. Sometimes your real estate license is reciprocal in other states. Sometimes you have to start from square one to get a license in that state or so.
Yeah. It's interesting because the CPA profession is regulated. I mean, it is regulated by each state. They make up their rules and regulations and laws for CPAs, but it's over that is something called the AICPA, which is the American Institute of CPAs. They basically regulate the profession. They come up with the accounting promulgations, and it took me 3 years before I can get that word right, and the rules and regulations. And they're the ones that prepare the exam, the CPA exam, and monitor it and regulate the CPA exam. So if you pass it in one state, they'll allow you to have the acknowledgement that you've passed it for all states in a sense because it's a U.S. exam. But each state, though, has their specific requirements, state by state, to be certified in their state.
Okay.
That's a mouthful. I need some water. Is that okay?
Very interesting. All right, I'll tell you, you need some water. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. We'll take a little bit of break and all to pay some of the bills, and we'll come right back with Robert Gralla, who is someone you should know.
3, 2, 1. KVGIRadio.com.
Y'all have really just opened my bubble and just...
KVGI Radio brings you conversation and entertainment. Be sure to follow us on social media. Who streams the best talk shows? We do.
listening to KVGIRadio.com. Streaming live from the KVGI studios in Frisco, Texas. Live without limits.
Three, two, one. KVGI.
Someone you should know. A program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sachs, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sachs.
And we are back live in the studio with Robert Gralla, who is a CPA and a CFE. And I've kind of led people to make sure they'd listen to the show so they would know what a CFE is. I'm sure there's some people that just Googled it because they like to cheat, and cheating is not allowed in accounting.
It depends who you talk to. No, just kidding.
But a CFE is a certified fraud examiner.
Yes, sir.
And that's fascinating to me, so I want you to share with the audience a little bit about the duties and what a certified fraud examiner does.
Okay. It's basically a financial detective. You go in after the fact and you figure out what happened. Who, for example, embezzled the funds, how they did it, and even why they did it. Because you need to know all of that information in order to bring it to a court case, whether it's a civil case or whether it's a criminal case for fraud. So you have to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And that's the basic brickwork, the foundation of it. Now, what a CFE does is numerous things. Basically, for example, there's a fraud in a business. For example, let's say the controller of the company is embezzling funds. They're taking money because they have some financial need. So they find a way to take money and nobody is aware of it. I come in and I go through their books, I go through their records, I interview the personnel of the company, and I try to figure out who did it, how they did it, what they did, and why. And it's interesting, there's a doctor of sociology, I believe his name was Dr. Ken Casey, and he came up with this thing called a fraud triangle. And there's basically three elements to this fraud triangle. Somebody doesn't wake up in the morning and go, oh, I'm going to go commit fraud today. I have nothing else to do. They usually do it because there's a lot of factors involved, and they believe they have no choice in the matter. and this is their way out. So the fraud triangle is one thing. Three things. First thing is what they call motivation. Why would somebody want to embezzle money from a company? Well, they have a financial need that they really can't disclose. For example, they're behind in their mortgage payments. They're just not making enough money to survive. Their spouse has large medical bills, their children's tuition. They want to keep up with the Joneses. They have gambling debts. There's some reason that motivates them, or some need for that money.
Right.
So
right.
that's the starting factor. The other factor is they're able to get the money. I have my hands on the company's checkbook. I just write a check. Nobody's going to know any better. I'm the inventory clerk. I could take a couple of pieces of equipment, put it out the back door, and I could pick it up after work, put it in my trunk, and sell
it on the black
market.
market.
For cash.
Yep.
Exactly. So they have a need, and they have an ability to get their hands on something of value. Then the third factor is the rationalization. In your mind, you rationalize. The average person, an honest person, is not going to steal. But if you're so down and out, and then you can rationalize what you're going to do, then you're going to do it. Or in most cases, you will.
Yeah, the boss just bought a $4 million yacht and everything, and I'm still struggling to make ends meet. So he's not going to miss an extra 10 grand.
Exactly. Or I'm in a bad place right now. When things are better, I will pay it back.
Yeah, right.
I worked for this company for all these years. I'm underpaid. I deserve to have this. And once that rationalization kicks in, bingo. Most cases, you're going to find somebody committing a fraud. So what I do is one of the first things is I interview the owners of a company, or even if it's an organization, a charitable organization, somewhere where there's somebody that some fraud has taken place. And there's multiple types of frauds. I'm just using one as an example.
Right.
So I interview the owner or the board of directors, and I find out information. And I ask, for example, who just bought a brand new house? Who just bought a brand new car that's out of their means? Who's going on vacations? Who has issues? Who's coming in late? Who's taking large vacations? So I sort of try to narrow things down a little bit. Then I go through their books and their records, and I look for things that look odd. And I do certain statistical analysis on their books and their records, cash analysis, sales analysis. I try to figure out where there's something that doesn't make sense and where there could be a hole in the system. And then I start to explore that. It's interesting because somehow, some way, there's always a paper trail. There's always some sort of a paper trail, especially in today's electronic world. You know, if you don't write a paper check, you have an electronic transfer. There's always a trace of something somewhere.
And that's on the hard drive.
On the hard drive,
Yeah.
banking records. There's always something. I found a case once. A guy started a fictitious, a bookkeeper of a company started a fictitious company. And what they were doing is in this company, there was any purchase over $1,000 had to be approved by a supervisor.
Okay.
So what he would do is he would write checks for less than $1,000, $750, $800, and it didn't have to be approved. And it went to some fictitious company. And what I did was I did an analysis of where their bills were being sent, and I found this one company with a P.O. box in another part of Texas, and it just looked suspicious, and I started to investigate who owned the P.O. box, and bingo, it was the bookkeeper of this company. And we started to investigate a little further, and he actually confessed to what he was doing. That was just one of the cases. I worked on another case. It was a $10 million land fraud. Well, land fraud was involved, but fraud case. When I first got involved, I sat down with the attorneys, and one of the first things the attorney said to me was, "You're not afraid of people that are hired to beat up other people, are you?" And I said, "I'm good.
Well, you're from New York. I know a guy.
I know a couple of guys, you know." And we had this woman that was working in this man's office was embezzling money, and we caught her, and she got more than a hand slap. I can tell you, a few other cases that I've worked on, but basically it's you go in after the fact and you figure out what happened, who did it, why they did it, and what the motivation was behind the whole scheme that they did on a fraud examination.
So I mean, obviously that seems like it's got a little bit more appeal to it than just sitting there every day at your desk just crunching numbers and putting them in the right columns.
Yeah.
and as you're telling these stories, I'm sure I'm thinking, and I'm sure there's a lot of people around the country listening to this show right now are thinking, geez, this is like the TV shows and all, because there's always somebody trying to get away with something. I mean, I hate to say it, and I won't delve into it too much, but right up at the top, this is what's happening in Washington right now, is that people are doing things under the table. And people like you are out there, and like the FBI and the CIA, you're there because you have to investigate it. Now, are you then called into the courts and all to testify to say, these were my professional and expert findings in order for you to reach the judgment?
Yes, in many cases, I am called in to be an expert witness in the case and to testify on my observations, to testify on the work that I've done, and testify, based on fraud triangle, or testify based on my interviews with the personnel in various cases, whether it's civil, because they want to get their money back, they want to sue, and sometimes in a criminal case, I have to testify as well. And the hard part in testifying is the opposing counsel always tries to
Discredit your
you.
findings, sure.
Yeah, discredit you. If they can't discredit your findings,
Because that's their job.
They try to discredit you. That's the hardest part. Findings are black and white. You can't dispute the findings.
It's fascinating. You know, you got here just a little bit late. We may have to have you come on again because there's so many other things that you do. But I know that as we're approaching the end of our show, you also like motorcycles, and you said you sent a note to me, and you said that you have traveled all over the country. You know who else has done that? I don't know whether you've ever ridden with him.
I don't know. Who?
Former Mayor Masso.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mayor Masso has traveled. He not only does street bikes, but he does dirt bikes off-road, and he's gone up the Appalachian Trail, and he's gone into the Rockies, and he just loves cycling all over the country. So, you've probably seen an awful lot of the country from the road.
Yeah, from the two wheels.
That's fascinating.
It's my passion. I had an accident a few years back, and I still need to replace the motorcycle that I totaled in my accident, but touring around the country is my passion. I love going into the Rocky Mountains and just exploring the mountains. I've been out west. I've been from coast to coast. I've been to New York. I've been to California. I've been South Texas. I've been up to Montana, Wyoming. I've been to, of course, many times, the big motorcycle rally in South Dakota, Sturgis.
Sturgis, yeah.
I've been there many times. It's it's so much
They say
fun.
that, that's like the creme de la creme of cycling.
It's interesting. Sturgis is very crowded. It's crazy. And I go with my friends. We stay maybe 2 or 3 days, and that's all I can take. It's crowded. It's loud. It's noisy. I had my fill after about 2 or 3 days. And then what we do is we explore. We go into Wyoming. We go further into South Dakota. We go into Montana. We go into Utah. We go into Idaho and Colorado. There's just so many beautiful scenes, mountains, streams, rivers that you can just drive through. It's just so peaceful. God created this earth. And it's incredible to take part in.
See, people that travel by air don't realize what they're missing. And I'm not a motorcyclist, but I would get in a car and I would go anywhere and everywhere I have to go by car because I don't want to miss the scenery along the highways. We've eaten up an hour.
Oh my gosh!
Almost. It's amazing. But Robert Gralla, and if people want to give you a call, the number to reach you at.
You can call me at 214-244-2535.
And I know that your website is under construction right now.
Unfortunately,
but keep checking in. Also rgralla at robertgralla.com.
That's right.
If they want to reach you that way also.
RGRALLA at ROBERTGRALLA.com.
And if you know where the KVGI studios are, he's right below us in the same building. So stop in sometime. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on Someone You Should Know. And that'll do it for another edition of the show. Please come back, join us again next week, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.